My wrist just did this weird thing. Hello! I've been practicing a British accent all morning and it still sounds terrible and awkward. Yay. I'm just about to rewatch some Under the Dome, and maybe later I'll make some GIFs, particularly of Julia Shumway, because Julia Shumway, oh my god. Bye. I haven't really been doing much lately other than a bit of studying for exams, but a bit of not studying for exams because there was this earthquake that happened, and that was fun. I'm gonna tell you about the earthquake. Last night, night before last night, at about I went to bed at about 10, which means I went to sleep at around 11, and then next thing I know, like, I don't remember dreaming or anything. I probably did, but I don't remember it. The next thing I knew, there was all this shaking, but it wasn't like the kind of shaking I'm used to, because here in Christchurch we get a lot of earthquakes, like, constantly. You can't get enough of them. Honestly, it's annoying. But we hadn't had like a huge one like this for a few years, and it was different to those ones anyway. It felt, a lot of people have described it as more of a rolling kind of thing, like it's underneath your house, and to be honest, that's the best I can come up with to describe it. It was very strange, and obviously I knew right away that this was an earthquake because I've been through so many of them, be those little or big ones, and I was like, okay, earthquake is this, but the same thing happened in my mind, which always happens when an earthquake starts, which is this going to become a bigger earthquake? Is this going to be big? Is this going to kill us all, basically? Love anxiety. And so I was mildly freaking out because at this point it had maybe been going on for a minute, and that's much longer than usual. And honestly, it felt like it went on for about 5 minutes. It probably didn't, but it felt like that. And a lot of people I've talked to have said it felt like that. And I was freaking out by this point. I'm like, oh my god. But I was sort of keeping it in because I didn't think anyone else was awake, even though this huge earthquake was happening. I didn't think anyone was awake. And then I heard from next door to where my parents sleep, my dad sort of talking, because like I can always hear him talking because his voice is so loud, and it's really annoying usually, but sometimes it's good to eavesdrop. So I listened in on his conversation with Mum, and he said something about tsunami and evacuation, and I was like, what? Because tsunamis are probably my biggest fear. Apart from fire, tsunamis are my biggest fear ever. And I cannot handle, I was just like, oh my god, what's happening? Do we have to evacuate the house? Do we have to evacuate New Zealand? Is New Zealand going to become a huge, is this one of the stages of the fifth wave? What's going on? And then I called out, I'm like, Dad, what is happening about tsunami? And he went all quiet because he's like, you're not supposed to be listening. But then he eventually was like, and I said, so is there going to be a tsunami? And he said, maybe. And I went, oh my god, a tsunami. But he went, but it's only going to be on the coastlines of New Zealand. So I know nothing about coastlines, which is pretty terrible because I'm doing geography next year. But I was like, what is a coastline? And he's like, it's basically around New Brighton. And immediately my brain went, oh god, for another reason, because I have a lot of friends who live over in New Brighton, and they were immediately the first thing that popped into my mind, and I was like, oh my god, they're going to die. And he's like, no, they're evacuating, can you hear? And I'm like, can I hear what? And he took me into the bathroom, and there were these really loud sirens, and I was like, okay. And then he's like, these are in Brighton, so we could like hear them from Christchurch. And that was pretty terrifying. Is New Brighton in Christchurch? I don't know, honestly, I don't know. I don't know anything. And then I could hear like a TV going from the lounge, but it wasn't like cool TV stuff. It was like the news. And Mum was down there like watching it. So what I did was Dad was like, just try and get back to sleep. And I'm like, you think I'm going to be able to sleep after this? So I put together this pack, like a huge bag, and put all the things I couldn't live without, like Carol on DVD, like my beanie, maybe or maybe not a Kristen Stewart magazine. And then Dad was like, you don't need to put it together a pack, but I have two, so I guess just in case. And he's like, if I do come in and say it's time to evacuate, we have to go straight away. And he assured me that we could take our cats. So I was like, okay, at least we can take our cats. But I was like, our house, oh my god, what's going to happen? And I went down with the bag to hear the bottom lounge. My mum was watching the news, and then I just sort of sat there. I cried a little bit, and then the hours went on, basically, and it was just us watching the news and waiting, and I was on Tumblr making updates about it and going, oh my god, I'm dying, what's happening, I'm so scared. And then I went into an aesthetic blog and just started reblogging from that, and then I posted pictures of my cat, because, I don't know, I was out of my mind by that point, and I was so tired, but I couldn't sleep. I knew I was not going to be able to sleep. And eventually I brought down my sleeping bag and put it on the ground and lay down in it, but it was uncomfortable, and the TV was on, and I was stressed, so I obviously wasn't going to fall asleep. And then Mum went through like the TV, and the House at the End of the Street was on, so we watched that, and it was pretty bad. And then after that, the sun had started to rise a bit, like not full on sun's here, but like it was like morning. And I was exhausted, and then I'm like, wait a second, I have my NCEA exam today, because I'm currently on study leave, and my science exam was that day. And I thought to myself, surely they will have cancelled it. Maybe it's postponed or something. And the TV, we went back to the news, and it was like, NCEA exams, check with your school. So we checked with the school, and my exam had not been postponed. It was still happening, and it was still at the same time and same day. And I was like, thanks, okay, cool. And so these different options went through my head. Number one was that I could just stay home and sleep, and then all my study for especially genetics would have been for nothing, which I was really bummed about the idea of. The second option was to go and do the exam, but I was in the kind of state where I might just fall asleep if I stood up. And the third option was to get a derived grade, which means you go in and you do the test, but you get a derived grade thing, which means that you get the best result out of the two tests, because we did like a practice test, and that was in case of this kind of thing. So I went with option 3, and I went into school, and everyone was just buzzing like, oh my god, an earthquake happened, we nearly died, oh my god. And it was all anyone was talking about, honestly. It was obvious. And I think Facebook was going crazy too. Everyone was just like, we're going to die. It was like the day after Trump's election result. Honestly, it was that. And only just for a smaller amount of people, I guess. So I did the exam, and before the exam they were like, okay, we're all going to apply for a derived grade, like in bulk, so you can all get it. So we're like, thank you, because that was pretty cool. And I remember the exam was terrible. It was awful. Okay, so my first exam, the first one I've only had 2. The first one was my English exam, and that went okay. It went pretty well, actually. But I wasn't expecting, because I was so stressed, but it was a lot easier than I thought. It wasn't torture. But the science exam, after having 1 hour of sleep, this was torture. And I was just, okay, so I sat there and I looked through the books. Nothing that I had learned was in there. None of the stuff I'd studied was in there. And everything I didn't know was there. And I didn't know how to do anything in there. So I basically just wrote really basic stuff. But my hand was kind of weird, because I was so sleepy that it kind of like, ugh. So my handwriting looked terrible. And as well as that, my brain wasn't exactly able to put sentences together. So I can't remember exactly the kind of thing I wrote, but it was pretty bad. And before that exam, I was also in quite a state of, Mum calls it delirium, which is where I went to see my friends before the exam, and I think the conversation ended with me hysterically yelling at my friend Riley that she had a goblin inside of her and that she had to get him out. So, just basic stuff. And after the exam, I went home, tried to sleep, couldn't sleep, and just stayed awake all day, then went to sleep at night, and it was a good sleep. I'm still tired though. I'm still tired from this thing that happened 2 days ago. It was, oh god. Earthquakes aren't fun. Living in New Zealand isn't fun. Also, America, I'm assuming, it's not fun right now. Or the UK, or I kind of want to move to Canada. I mean, look, you have all the American versus Canadian jokes, but I think Canada now has the best thing, which is they can say, at least we didn't elect Trump as our president. So, what are you gonna do with that, America? Well, I'm gonna go now, and I'm going to do stuff that isn't very productive, but it's stuff. And I hope you all have a good time, day, whatever it is. If you're in New Zealand too and you felt the earthquakes, how could you not feel the earthquakes? They were huge. Leave a comment. Where are you in New Zealand? How badly did it affect you? Did the tsunami hit where you live? Did you have to evacuate? Give me all the gossy details. I was meant to say glossy, but I was going to say gossip, so it turned into gossy. I don't think gossy is a word. You don't say gossy. Bye.